All right, what's going on, everybody? I am back with Curtis. The first episode had so many technical difficulties. It's all Curtis's fault. His Wi-Fi sucks. It is
It's
what it
pretty
is,
true.
man. It is
It's
what it
true.
is. But we talked before the podcast, and we are going to work on me helping him run some lines in his house for Ethernet so, he can have something upstairs. So that's going to happen someday. But Curtis, you're an electrical distribution designer. Why don't you explain that?
I design overhead and underground poles, transmission, or transformers. To serve uh, uh, commercial and residential. So it's such a fun job. It's pretty much I am an electrical engineer, but I'm not.
So you design the telephone poles that they call them telephone poles, but they're power lines. They're like
Yeah,
power poles. I don't know why they call them telephone lines. Probably because the telephone lines were ran on them, but not anymore.
yeah.
Right? Aren't they ran in the ground, or do they still use them as
Um,
telephone poles?
Well, yeah, since everything pretty much goes through fiber now, and AT&T has done a whole lot of work, especially here in Texas, to install new underground services and everything. So your telephone and your cable are all ran through the same fiber, so it's all underground. But there's still telephone lines that are
Right.
overhead.
Right. Have you ever seen that there's a photo back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, where in New York it was literally looked like Spider-Man made a nest. You know what I mean? It was just
Yeah,
telephone lines. You know what I'm talking about? It was a nasty nest of just tons and tons of telephone lines
doesn't
or power
surprise me.
cables.
It's
I
still
couldn't I couldn't remember which one they
yeah.
were.
Yeah, it does surprise me. They still have that overseas. There's poor countries. They still have this ball of yarn of electrical wire overhead that just looks so grotesque. It's
And it's
just
probably a safety hazard. Somebody could die, but
most likely, yes, crisscrossing and everything.
and people are trying to steal. I'm pretty sure there's a number of people in places that don't have tons of regulation that are grabbing that cable. I mean, I've actually done that before. I'm not gonna lie.
You grabbed a cable,
When
a
you don't
live
pay for
wire.
cable, well, no, that's not what I meant. I meant like in apartment buildings where you borrow cable
Oh yeah,
from someone.
yeah. You just splice in. It's not that hard, but they've made it difficult nowadays. So
Yeah, you got different filters for different signal and all that kind of stuff.
proprietary splitters and wire. So yeah.
They try. That's why you got to know a cable guy.
Yeah,
You got to
this is
make
true.
friends in high places. Or technically in low
Is that
places.
how it goes? Yeah, I think it's low places. Yeah.
But this is basically a redo of the podcast because of the technical difficulties. So I had a lot of timestamps written out, so we're going to dive into those and just try to make sure that we touch base on everything that we talked about before. So one of these issues, or not issues, well, kind of, is leadership in the workplace. Now, the reason why I bring this up is I want everybody to understand it's a constructive criticism, not so much a complaint. Like, what I mean by leadership in the workplace is I've seen too many managers that were ticket takers and they didn't actually help lead people, teach people, and grow people. And in my experience, I've seen really great managers. I'm still friends with one, and it. Sorry, I just got reminded. We had to go to a funeral of a mutual friend of ours that worked with us, and that was his name's Jason Lamar Dewberry, and he passed away due to COVID. So may he rest in peace. But Edgar was my manager, and he I'm a very particular person. I I think a certain way, and when I try to communicate, I am very adaptive. Like I'll adapt to the environment where I'm working. Some people they don't mind me the way I am. I'm detail oriented, so sometimes I may be working with a lead or a manager that they can receive that, or I'm working with people that are like, be simple, man. Like small amount of words,
Yeah, yeah.
and I get that, but when you're working with people that can adapt a little bit to who you are, but then also kind of help you grow, Edgar really did that when I was working with him at Sprint, and it's cool because like him and I came from Radio Shack. That's where we worked before. We didn't go to Sprint at the same time. He was at Sprint longer than I was because he was a manager, but like he knew how I worked, and managers that care about how people work and pay attention to those things really
Mhm.
help people understand how to grow as a person and how to work where they're at. You know what I mean? Because sometimes the difference between somebody growing as a person or just growing in the position they're at and moving on to something better is a manager understanding who that person is, figuring out how they work, and making it work to their benefit. Because the thing is like when you hire people on board, you're never going to find the perfect person.
Mhm.
And sometimes people only want to hire people they want to hang out with. The problem is people you want to hang out with just may not be the best people to work with, or they
Exactly.
may not be the best worker, whatever the job is.
Yeah.
And so it makes everything else suffer when you're basically having that person on the team and they don't actually do the kind of work that needs to be done, or they're slacking. And so because they're your friend or the type of person you want to hang
You're
out with,
keeping them around. Yeah.
yeah. And it makes everybody else suffer because they're trying to really find a way to grow either where they're at in the company or just grow as a person. And so it really hurts everybody else. But I mean, what's been your experience with that? Have you experienced bad leaders, good leaders? What's been your example of a good leader and a bad one?
Oh yeah, I've experienced tons of bad leaders, a handful of good leaders. And the reason I am the way I am today, I just had the conversation with somebody the other night, last night, about it, where he comes from the military, and he was, we were just talking about military stuff, and I stopped and I said, I do applaud the military, the good side of the culture of what it actually teaches you and how it helps you grow as a human being, where it teaches you, teamwork and being accountable and all kinds of stuff like that. And I said, no disrespect, it equals the manager training that McDonald's has. If you, in any aspect of life, if you have an open mind, you can learn a lot from anything. It can help you in your routine of life. Period. So I, as somebody who started out in McDonald's and I worked there for 10 years, became a manager and everything, I can tell you that there are some really good qualities that you can get from working in at least McDonald's. But I couldn't speak from any other fast food industry other than probably Chick-fil-A. I mean, they're really strict. So, but
Right.
you can learn some really good uh, uh, teaching moments, leadership, anything from working at a fast food restaurant. So my one of my good friends that I'm still friends with to this day, he was my one of my first bosses, and he taught me everything that I know, and I look up to that guy like he was my best man at my wedding.
Wow,
So
really?
yeah, yeah. So it's that's the number one thing that I've taken in life is I always keep the people that keep me humbled around me. You
Right.
know,
Right.
if not yes men, not people that just pat me on the back or stroke me off. I want to keep people
Yeah,
around
you don't want
that.
people that stroke you off, man.
Definitely don't. Unless my wife, no, nobody else. But it I've had managers that just you can just tell. Because I started out as a manager young,
Right,
19. I amongst my peers, it was really difficult for me. I once I left that environment, I realized that it was not the thing for me. I can't I'm not a good leader because, or back then, I wasn't a good leader because I wasn't able to rule with an iron fist. I wasn't able to
right,
to actually uh, discipline. It didn't feel right. People my age, even people older than me. Disciplining somebody that's older than me. That could be my mom. It's like
right.
it just didn't feel right. Years down the road, the man I am today is like, yeah, no, you just got to tell people the way that it is. It's like, look, if I got to fire you, I'm not firing you. You're firing yourself because you didn't do what you were supposed to do.
No, I
Plain
agree.
and simple. So there's managers that know how to, just like you were speaking on. There's managers that know how to use the 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 people that they have to get the job done. And that's the kind of leader that I love to have. Somebody that knows your skills and knows um, what you are capable of and how to use you properly, and also try to help you grow as an individual and as an employee, and possibly moving up the ladder.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Edgar and I have been friends for years, and he's taught me how like important it is to understand that not a lot of people care about a lot of information. They just want tidbits. And the manager I have, or the lead I have now, he's similar to him actually, but a little bit more aggressive in his. But the thing is, that people would perceive that as like him being an asshole, but that's not it at all. He's just very quick to like, that's not helping me. What you're saying, like, is not. I don't understand what you're saying. Like, I'll sometimes turn around to him and forget to tell him the context of what I'm trying to say, and I'll start talking to him about something, and he'll turn around and be like, "I don't know what you're talking about." You know what I mean? And like, there wasn't much that that I could do. You know what I mean? I had to turn around and be like, "Oh shit! All right, let me." Because he'll ask me some questions that throw me off, but it helps me think. And so
Mm.
sometimes he'll just help me by just asking a question, and then I realize that I didn't think about something.
I do that a lot too, and people think I'm an asshole. It's like you come to me with this question, and you have the resources
Right.
to figure this out on your own, but I'm not going to just give you the answer. I'm going to make you go through the process of trying to figure it out on your own.
Right.
Because I mean, if you can lead a fish to you can lead a man to the water, but you can't teach him how to fish.
Right.
However, that you what is it? You teach him how to fish. You feed him for no. You give a man a fish. You feed him for a day. You teach him how to fish. You feed him for life.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I get where he's coming from. It's like I can answer this stuff for you all day, but then you're just not going to try to figure it out on your own.
I agree. And like, the things that managers can do, really bringing us to the next point, is managers can focus more on getting to know people, like understanding that rapport is really important, because the learning stage, like when somebody first gets somewhere, it's not so much that they don't know something actually. Because when I started at the company I'm at now, and I'm hoping to, I mean, I'm hopefully interviewing on Monday, Tuesday for a software development role for Android, hoping that pans out, fingers crossed, because it's going to be so much more money than I'm making now.
Yeah, good luck.
I mean, thanks. If I get it, like, I'm going to be stoked. Like, I'm, and I would like to say that I'd be there for an entire year, but I'm hoping to shoot for 6 months. And the reason being is not that I'm trying to like skip and get the money and go, but it's just like I'm wanting to get the experience, but continue looking for the place that's going to be a bigger company that because I already have experience, it's like, okay, cool. Now I can actually get more. And it's not so much about the money as much as it is I'm trying to get to a certain goal because I have financial goals the wife and I are trying to accomplish. That if I don't get to those goals, I'm not going to, I don't reach the financial compensation goal. The wife and I are not going to be able to accomplish the other financial goals we have down the road. And, it's just going to take longer. And the quicker we get this done, the sooner it's going to be a lot easier for us to put some things together for when we have kids, because we want to try to have kids before we get out of the military. That's kind of the ideal situation. So if we can do that, then we don't have to pay for the kid. I mean, eventually we're going to be out of the military and still have a kid or two, but the first one, we don't want to be in the military we want to be in the military because we're not going to be in the place where we're going to be able to shell out the cash. But in the future, we will be able to, and hopefully we'll have, better situation at that point. But
yeah,
getting to know each other, understanding like that actually is a good point. Understanding like where are you at, like I'm not going to bullshit you. You're either going to be here for a long period of time because you like the company, or you have other goals and you find out down the road that this company's not going to be able to, because the company I'm at right now, there's no place for me to go. No place. I've asked numerous times, hey, do y'all have, because it's a software company that builds software for like independent pharmacies. Basically, it's a vendor. It's a software vendor for independent pharmacies. And so I've asked, like, hey, do y'all do Android? They said no. I'm like, well, look, I mean, I'm going to put my time in and do what I got to do. But at the end of the day, like, as much as because I get emotionally attached to the people I build relationships with, and not to be weird, but it's just like, you build a relationship and a rapport with people, and it makes it a little bit harder to kind of say, hey, here's my 2 weeks, and you've only been there for a couple of months. But the reality is, like, you just kind of need to grow, what is it, tough skin for that stuff. Because, and that's what and this kind of integrates into what managers should do. Like, managers should be ahead of this. Number one. Number two, they should be ahead of it to a point to where they understand, right, where somebody's at. The reality is you can't control what people do after they get hired, but you're hiring them because you need to fill in a role, right? For now.
Yes.
But if somebody says, hey, this is my goal, and you find out that, there's no way for them to grow to the goals they're trying to accomplish, there's no way for them to, move to where they want to go, they're obviously going to find a place somewhere else. But while they're here, you can just be honest with each other and say, this is what I'm trying to do. And like my lead told me, he was like, hey, man, like, if this is not for you, this is not like a job for, it's not a forever job. I get it. But he's just like, don't check out. Like, if you're applying for other jobs and you're getting interviews and you're getting a lot of bites and you're getting offers and you just haven't picked one yet, he's just like, don't check out. You know what I mean? And I was like, cool. Because while I'm here, I want to respect where I'm working. And that's another thing too. Like, you don't have to be a dick. Like, I think everybody understands, like, when you're able to be that rapport and you can have that conversation, like my lead knows. I told him, I was like, on Monday, Tuesday, I'm going to have an interview. I don't know which day, but I'm going to. And I let him know. He was like, cool. All right. Thanks. Just trying to, continue to work as hard as I can to get where I need to be while I'm there, because who knows? I could be interviewing for the next 6 months, But if I shit on where I'm at, or basically shit on where I'm eating, you know what I mean? Exactly. It's not going to benefit me,
Nope.
I'm not saying they're going to let me go, but because they're not staffed where they want to be. But when they get staffed where they want to be, they got choices.
Exactly.
So for me, I'm just like, yeah, I'll keep working. I'll keep doing what I got to do. But I feel like that's what managers need to do. They need to know where their people are at. Because you can't try to sell this false reality of, oh yeah, we're going to hire you. You're going to be here for a long time. And they're like, well, we want to try to keep you for at least 2 to 3 years. I'm like, that's laughable. They want to give a bonus first, and then you're contractually obligated with that bonus to stay there for 2 years, or else you have to pay it back. And I disagree with that entirely. And I've been debating whether I should take it or not. But then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, if I'm going to get a better job, if I'm leaving the company, I'm only leaving because I got better pay. Right? And if I'm leaving because I got better pay, then the reality is I'll use the money while I get it and pay off bills, whatever, but then turn around and just pay it off quickly because I'll have more money to do so. So it's just like it's an interest-free loan, basically.
Yeah.
Even though technically it comes with interest when you pay it off over time. But obviously, if I pay it off in like a couple of months, there's not really going to be much interest.
Yeah. So, I mean, it does help the employer to know, where their employee's mindset is so that the employer itself can plan for the long term if they're thinking that far.
Well, I mean, because they need bodies. That's really where it's at. And I'm
That's
making more money.
Mindset, though.
Yeah. Well,
if you run your business that way, you're not really caring about your employees. You just want able bodies. You just want a butt to fill that seat.
I hear you. Like this company, though, like they do a lot of good things to try to make people feel welcome and feel like they're appreciated. I'm not saying they don't. Like this company is probably one of the best companies I have worked for. The problem is it's not what I want to do, right? I want to get out of IT. I don't want to be in IT anymore because I'm kind of done with helping people that don't want to better themselves and learn skills. It's not that obviously if everybody, learned how to, I'm talking basic, like how to use a computer, man. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I'm not saying, you got to learn all about networking, all about computers and programming and all this other such. But if you know how to use a computer and how to navigate it, you're really saving time because you're basically making it to where when you get on the phone with me, you're able to tell me all this information and we build a rapport with customers to say, cool, like I don't have to be on the phone with you for an hour or two and we can actually get this done in less than 30 minutes. That's time saved. You know what I mean? I'm not on the phone with you. That's a benefit to both of us. It's not an insult. It's saying, I don't want to be on the phone as much as you do. You don't want to be on the phone as much as I do. So why don't we help each other? And you learn a little bit on how to actually use a computer, how to troubleshoot simple things. We're talking physical connections. We have to take 10 minutes just to help somebody understand what a network cable is versus a USB cable. What are you doing working on computers? Why are you operating a computer? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if I have to tell somebody where the start button is, oh my God, I have to do that every day. That is probably the most annoying thing is that I have to tell somebody where a start button is. I have to tell them how to search for an application. I'm like, what the hell? Not everything that lives on a computer is going to be on the desktop.
People Jesus are special.
Christ. It's just an annoyance. Like I get it, but it's like we're in 2020. We thought we were going to have hoverboards, hover cars, and all that kind of shit. Yeah. Nope. We got people who don't have a damn clue what they're doing with computers. So, wrapping up on the whole, what managers can do, man, they can also, even if they're not IT, right? If you're a manager of a team and you use computers every day, every company uses computers. I don't know what company doesn't. You should be focusing on demanding that your people, when they're onboarded, that if they don't know, and that's okay, they don't know how to use a machine and you're not requiring that they know how, but you're going to put them through, hey, here's a week class. It's your job to use a computer, so you need to know how to use it. It's your job to learn how to explain to the IT department what your problem is because you've tried things. The reason being is because people want to understand. They want to spend so much money trying to solve the inefficiencies in a company, and I guarantee you most of the time spent is IT troubleshooting somebody's problem because either it's remote and they're going based off what that person said, which users are always lying. I've
Mhm.
restarted it 3 times. I run a command that tells me the last time it was booted, and it wasn't rebooted until like yesterday. So you want to try again? Like, your solution is rebooting the computer. You can argue with me all day, but just do what I'm telling you to do. So, that's another thing that managers can do. When you're trying to get rid of inefficiencies, a lot of times it's going to be in the way that people, or the time that people spend on problems that they have. So if the problems are IT related and you're encountering similar issues over time, yeah, sure. I mean, it makes sense. Learn the solution to that problem. And if it happens again, just implement that solution. If it doesn't work, sure, it makes sense to get a hold of IT or whichever company you contract for your IT services. But at the same time, it's all about how much time do you want to spend. It's not so much about, it's like insurance, man. Like, IT is like insurance. If you're a small business, for example, and you being down costs you thousands of dollars every, like, say you're down for like half a day, you lost 5 grand, and it makes sense for you to pay $1,000 to $2,000 a month for an IT service, right?
Yeah.
It would make sense, regardless of paying that 2 grand, right, for you to still figure out how to solve the problem, because you know that if you're not working in your business or on it, you're losing money. But the IT services are an insurance in case something happens, and they can at least take, because I mean, if you didn't have the insurance or the IT services and you tried to figure shit out on your own and you're down for days, when an IT service can get you back up either same day or next day, you know what I mean? With the proper planning and engineering of a foundation in place, a lot of times what happens, buddy, is people don't actually have a simple backup. Simple backup.
Oh,
They don't have a backup solution in place, and things die. They lose shit. They don't have a
yeah.
backup drive, like an external drive. They don't have, you know, file history set up in Windows. That's another thing. And it all takes an infrastructure, but it costs money. But people always want like simple solutions.
Yeah. It saves money.
They want simple solutions to save money, but then they lose a lot of money because they didn't want to pay what's necessary. You know what I'm saying?
That was another thing that we talked about. I was just companies rather, instead of investing in the proper systems or procedures or whatnot, instead of
Yeah,
putting money into that for the long haul, they
right.
rather just send a little bit of money on a band-aid to save money. That
Right.
doesn't make sense.
The only time that band-aids make sense is when you know the band-aid is going to hold you over until the period of time. Like, for example, a band-aid holding you over because it's Wednesday and you need shit to work until Friday, when you can come in on Saturday and Sunday and spend the time necessary because you're closed on the weekends
Yeah.
to actually work on whatever solution is going to be more long-term. Then
When
yeah, like
people,
that, excuse me, that's where that shit makes sense. But I know I'm bitching and complaining, and we kind of went off from what managers can do. But I mean, it kind of still makes sense. All right, I get it. I'm bitching. I understand.
oh, it's a
But
wormhole. It's a
I mean,
definite
it
wormhole.
is, man. But like managers, if we can sum it up, managers can, when you're onboarding people and you're using computers, have a course. Okay. If you don't want to make it yourself, then contract somebody. There's a lot of people out there like myself. Holy shit, I'm coming up with the best idea in the world that I'm probably going to do. Probably. I'm going to write this shit down. But
No, you
basically,
probably stole it from me because I told you this is a consultant process or consultant company that I wanted to do.
what are you talking about?
I told you that I was like, I've thought about this for years. I want to do consulting for companies to revamp their training processes.
Oh, no, no, you did. But what I'm talking about is a course that just focuses on teaching people the basics of how to use a computer.
Oh yeah, I think you did talk about that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, if I didn't talk about it, I'm talking about it now. And because the wife and because I just had a podcast earlier with a guy who literally works for himself on YouTube and a website that has courses. People subscribe monthly to it
Mm,
or annually.
yeah.
And so basically what it is they would basically buy my course, and they would essentially have the new onboarded employee go through this course,
Mm,
and at the end they would take tests and shit like that, and they would reference the material when they have problems, and The thing is, though, is that like in regards to efficiencies and all that kind of shit, it's all about expectations too. Managers, they need to understand that there are better solutions. You just don't want to do it. They're like, oh, we don't
Oh
have
yeah,
time for that. I'm like,
yeah.
oh, dear God. If we have time, if you have time to bullshit with people for 10, 15 minutes throughout the day in different periods of time, you chunk that together for about an hour, you can sit down and do something different and try to see if it works. And it's just
No,
about,
I think the mindset needs to be more so that if this process is going to help us in the long run, then we need to take the time out of the day or couple of days and train everybody on it.
yeah. Well,
Plain and
and,
simple.
and then there's also something about that. You can't start something new and then not hold people accountable. Like you can't put somebody through a course, right? And
Mm.
then they're having problems down the road and the course covered that, but
Oh yeah.
because they didn't want to, because the thing is like the problem is, and this pisses me off, because nowadays, and this I understand that I said I'm just going to do a course for companies and they have people who watch it, but there's something also to that, right? You watch the course, but it's the managerial staff or the lead staff responsibility when holding people accountable. It doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to get in trouble. When I say hold accountable, I also mean it's just encouragement. It's like, if because there's a way the brain works, right? Like you're not going to learn something just because you watched like a shit ton of videos, right? That's not how that
You
works.
have to do it
People have
hands
to
on.
do it. They have to like work through it. There's
Yeah.
auditory learners, there's visual learners, there's kinesthetic learners, or a mix of all of the above. And it's their I would say obligation to encourage them to say when they reach a problem and they know that it's in the material that they have, like, hey, so that's actually in that material. So do me a favor. Before you ask me, go look there and see if that helps you.
Hmm.
And then if you have questions still because it doesn't make sense, then come ask me. But I'm still going to hold you accountable to the fact that we have that covered in that material. We spent a lot of money on that. You need to look at it.
Extreme ownership.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have a
That's it.
book that talks about that.
Is it from
Or
what's
no, I
his
don't. I
name?
don't have. I don't have the actual book. I think I sold it like a dumbass. But it's by this. It's by this author, Jocko
Yes,
Willick.
I did his
Yeah,
seminar. Yes,
extreme.
we
Yeah, you told me about that.
yeah,
That dude's a motherfucker. That dude's a
yeah,
badass.
the
Look,
whole group
yeah,
of them.
discipline equals freedom, right? So I still haven't read this book. I'm an idiot and I need to read it. I know, but I have a lot of books I'm reading through,
we
like
have
this.
that book. What is that?
Aliens. Hello.
Oh my God, this guy.
Hold up. Hold up. ESP. It's reality, man.
But yeah, I truly do. I've been through that seminar once.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're probably not going to have it this year because of COVID. But
Right.
they pretty much every year they send they take the whole day. They make us come in on a Friday, which the majority of us are off on. Well, at least our office is off on Fridays. So that's
So
like
y'all have 3-day
overtime
weekends?
for yes.
Oh, you must
I
do
have
10-hour days.
yeah, I do 10-hour days. Yeah,
Nice,
but
man. I used to do
I
something like that.
our industry pretty much does that. I've been doing it. I've been at this company going on 2 years in like a couple of weeks, and even before that, when my last company, I did 410. So it's just what we do in the company. I mean, the industry just I guess makes more sense. But yeah, they made us come in on a Friday. We had to go down to New Braunfels, and like it was an all day thing. They fed us dinner. I mean, fed us lunch, and we're just sitting there the whole time, just going through the presentation. These dudes are like badass, Green Beret.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know the
Come
stories.
from yeah, it's crazy, but their program that they came up with. I mean, it just makes sense. It's just like extreme ownership. Like yes, you are the leader. You task this person to do the job, but did you actually explain to them properly how to do it? So
Fuck
yes,
yeah. Thank you.
they messed up, but did you explain? Because you, as the leader, have to know this person's ability of
Exactly. We were just
listening.
talking about that 10 minutes ago.
Exactly.
I'm
So
sorry, man. I get pretty amped with this shit.
yeah, no, I mean when it comes full circle and
Because that's it though. That's it, right? Like
Yeah,
you have to not only you have to know the person, number one. That's the biggest thing. You have
yeah,
to know the person to be able to explain to them in the way they receive information. That's half the battle. You can't just be like, I'm the boss man. You're my bitch, and you're gonna do what I tell you because I'm the boss, not you. I told you to
ex-
do something. You go do it. And if you ask a question, you're an asshole. Like that's not
yeah.
how that works.
Exactly. So it's like if you like you were talking about, if you want to get the job done in a faster pace, you have to know the ability of your employees, and you
Yeah.
just have to find that shortcut. So you know
Yeah.
this person, they can only get it visually. So you have to show them this person.
Right.
You tell them it, and they never ask again. So you just have to know.
Right. I keep forgetting my fans. I can't hear my fans on my computer, and I set them on high. So this entire podcast is going to have shit tons of background noise. I just turned it off. So, whoops. Sorry, audio. Your ears are better now. So, I mean, listen, I love those guys. I follow Joe Rogan. He was kind of the inspiration of why I wanted to start this because I wanted to have conversations with people because I love talking.
Mhm.
But more importantly, I mean, there's important topics we're going to be diving into. And I think it's important that people who want to talk, have a message, have skills, have whatever, they get on YouTube, make videos. Like I have been hesitant, if I'm being honest, to start my the real content that I want to make. I actually did post a new update on the debt journey, by the way, explaining why the fuck I didn't post a video since like, earlier this year.
Mhm.
And I want to get back into it because starting in January, the wife and I are going hardcore in paying off bills, and just kind of diving in. So there'll probably be an update in February of where things are at because after when everything settles down with Biden and Trump and all that shit. By the way, I have posted the election episode. I
Sweet.
posted two of them, but I need to get. I had to focus on my buddy's podcast because he was asking about it, and I was like, "All right, I'll get that done." It's really just because I had a backlog because um, I thought I was going to have a good process to kind of bust him out, and I didn't really have that aligned. There was a little bit of hesitation, fear, that kind of shit. Oh no, I have this podcast, and I kind of pushed through it, and now I'm actually getting it out there, and now I think I have the 6 episodes now. But also, we had to redo your podcast, which messed up because yours was going to be the fourth podcast. I moved James Furman to number 4. I had moved my buddy Mitch, he's number 6. He technically was supposed to be 12, but technically he's 11 because I had my number 6th podcast. He ghosted me. That
Oh yeah,
that
yeah.
sucked. Yeah. So I was like, all right, whatever. So I had to move some shit around, and so I think I'm at a good place now. So moving forward,
Okay.
hopefully, you know, nobody ghosts me, but but hey, like I have had 11 guests and I only had one person ghost me, so that's a good percentage. I mean, it's like out of 10,000 units that are mass produced, you're gonna have like 100 units or 1,000 units that are gonna be shitty, so
Hey,
whatever.
hey, we're humans. We make mistakes. So
Yeah, it is what it is. So I mean, yeah, Jocko, make sure I get his last name right. What's up, Jarvis? Oh, there goes some books. um
Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm gonna blame it on Jarvis. It was Jarvis's fault. Jalo Willink? Willink?
I couldn't remember his last name. He actually
I
wasn't there
I
that time, but
I
yeah, I just
apologize.
remember
Let me
Chaco.
get the but so I mean I do believe in these principles. I think the one thing that does hold me back though, and this can be construed as an excuse, but I really do believe like you're stuck in the rat race. And there's a lot you can do in the morning. There's a lot you can do in the evening. But in the morning, you're in the mindset of getting ready. There's not a whole ton of time to really kind of do your own thing. And then in the evening, you're kind of stuck like, okay, what am I trying to do on the side hustles? What's going on with the wife, or in your situation, what's going on with the kids? And she and I are trying to explore how we can get the membership site for her piano lessons up and running. And I'm encouraged. I was encouraged by my buddy Mitch to, he didn't encourage me directly, but I want to try to look into doing a website that has courses and stuff like that on it for Android development, because I feel like there needs to be more people out there that do that, and I feel like I could have a certain perspective on teaching people, because I love doing that. Which is why I have such a passion about the way managers should teach people and how dynamic they need to be and not very static, and how they handle people, because you have to adjust, because every time you bring somebody new on, you're going to have a high energy person, you're going to have a low energy person, but the low energy person might actually produce more than the high energy person, because they're more for morale, office, camaraderie. They do have things that are beneficial. They may not be as high producing, but when that person is not there, the day doesn't go by as quickly. Things aren't as fun. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. You get those kinds of people that are the glue of the
Yeah.
office. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I mean, and
That's
like you
what drives
said, it's
me.
a rat race. That's all we do. We wake up, we go to work, we come home, we do home stuff. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of leans on to like why it can be difficult to try to learn new skills. Cause me, I'm getting into a very good process with the podcasts, and I want to continue to do that. And I find it interesting because when I schedule guests, right, not just have podcasts with friends constantly, when I schedule by myself, like me doing a podcast with you and other people, by just saying, yo, would you like to be on the podcast? Now I don't want to fail that person. So now I feel obligated. Does that make sense? So now it's more, not that it's not fun. That's not the point. I'm just saying now I'm committed, because that person is expecting me to do a podcast with them. They're saving time that, I have to respect their time. You know what I mean? And
oh
so
yeah,
it really, for me, it, it helps me grow more efficient as I continue doing this and finding a process that works better. So,
that's good. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That kind of brings me into the topic of entrepreneurship, because we've been talking about that a little bit. But you had mentioned you wanted to get into entrepreneurship. So what exactly have you been looking into? What are your ideas? What are your thoughts? I know you mentioned earlier that you wanted to do a company where you consult for other companies, but what kind of a consulting company did you want to build?
That's the thing. I haven't done a lot of research on it, and yeah, I should do some more research. Um, yeah, I pretty much just want to, like I said, come up with a consultant company that helps. Probably have to start little because I'm not going to get a big business right off the bat, but um, helping them to create a training process. Um, I have a lot of experience, especially when it comes to McDonald's, about training and coming up with training processes. I literally had to create two training programs. Uh, so it's not hard for me. When I first started off, I hated training people because it things just come simple to me. So when somebody else doesn't get it, I get really irritated.
Yeah.
Uh, and I guess to an extent, I still have that with me, but I've learned to keep trying to find different avenues of of getting it through to somebody, you know. But
Yeah.
that's pretty much what I would like to do. I've been, if you look at my resume, I've been with tons of businesses, and only a couple of them have a decent training program. I
Yeah.
would I would
Not a lot of companies have a good program at all.
No, not even the company I'm at right now. Like, uh, I mean, it's more of um, not so much just bringing in anybody anymore. Uh, the place that I used to work at, TRC, that's pretty much what they did. It was like, oh, you have no experience, cool, come over here, we'll teach you how to do it. But then again, it's like the people that exist there right now don't really have the experience themselves. But the company I'm with now, it's like they brought in people that have experience in some sort of way when it comes to this industry. So it's a little different, but there's no training process at all. It's just like, oh, okay, over here we used to do this. Well, then we don't do that over here. Uh, I've since day
How they're
one.
not
I've
open. How they're not open to like new things. Is that what you're talking about?
No, not so much open to new things. Just that even for me, when I worked at TRC, we still worked for Encore too, but
Right.
we did things a little different. We didn't do the exact same projects as I do now, but there's just certain things that we did that when I came here, they don't do that. And
Right.
even in the 2 years that I've been here, there have been processes that have been implemented, or coming down from Encore, but now they've been next. It's just like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Oh, okay. And it's like it's a kind of afterthought because it's like, oh yeah, you guys been doing this, but we don't do that anymore. So
Right.
everything that hasn't been approved yet, you're gonna have to go back and change it. It's like,
Wait. Oh man, that's tough, man.
yeah. So it's like since day one for the last 2 years, I have been keeping track of processes that have been told to me because they just like anything else that people do around here. My son's high school has this bad too. They it's just word of mouth. There's nothing in writing. They don't give you
Right.
anything in writing. Like they have their own standards book.
That's
The
really
Encore.
annoying, man, because it just becomes what people say is the thing when in
Yeah,
reality if it's there's not because it's all about
there's no.
scaling, dude. I mean, we deal with that in programming like I do anyways. Like not that I'm a part of a dev shop yet. Speaking that into existence. Hello. Um auto suggestion, but it's you need to have something that is helpful to other people and is attractive. And when you have situations like that, it becomes unattractive simply because everybody has their own lives. And when you're not helping them do things a little easier, it becomes more difficult and it's just a hassle.
It makes it difficult in a group setting because if we're supposed to be uniformed and there's nothing but hearsay, oh yeah, we're not doing that anymore, oh we got to do this, oh we got to do that, and then like it's just so many things that are going on, and I'll turn around to my lead and I'm like, so you said we're supposed to do this, right? And like, no, but you just told me this last week. No, no, we're not supposed to do that. And then later on, be like, oh yeah, yeah, we were supposed to do that, bro.
Yeah.
And so and so I've been keeping track myself. I have a Word document that I keep track of all the certain uh, designing processes that we have for multiple projects because we do tons of different things for them, automation or reconducting or just regular maintenance jobs. I keep a separate. I have processes for each of those
Yeah.
projects that I
Yeah.
write down, and then when they nix one, I just cross that off the list. But I'll keep track of that. Processes. I just created a whole folder full of like training stuff that I'm sure nobody else has. And I create a binder. And so every time some new person has come in, I just have all this stuff. And I'm just like,
Just so it's
here's this,
helpful
here's
so
that,
it's
here's
helpful
that,
for
here's that.
them. Yeah, and
Yeah,
they don't have to sit here and play this game of what do I do? And people are like, I don't know, just figure it out. Like that to me is garbage because you're not helping anybody.
no, definitely not. It's a tricky thing, especially in the situation I'm in, because it's like our office manager, he wants things done a certain way. My lead is like, all right, we're following suit. I know what he wants. This is what we're gonna do. But then there's certain ways of going about it. It's like, all right, so here's the final result that we want, and he's like, oh, you got to do it exactly this way. You got to take all these steps exactly the same way that I do. And I'm just like, look, here's what the final result is supposed to be. Whatever way that you feel like getting to that point, have at it. Here's the tools. Get it done. That's why I'm at, because
Right.
it's like I've always told people, you have to come up with a routine for yourself. If you're just all over the place, you're definitely gonna forget shit. So I have a routine of how I do
Got to have a
things.
routine, man.
Yeah, because it's like, I'll have a piece of paper that says, all these materials that I need to install on this pole, and
Right.
I know, and certain things that I'm learning to do now, I'll actually take that sheet and I will write next to it, what category it's under in the system.
Yeah.
And so as I'm going through and designing this poll, you got a little drop down that has all the categories. So guess what I do? I go category by category from top to bottom, and I put all my materials in from that category. And I do it that way because that's a little checklist for me. I
Yeah.
just did this last piece of material. It's in this category. So that means that I just finished that category. I need to go on to the next category.
Yeah.
It's a
I,
process, and I can't tell people how to come up with their own processes, but you just need to know that if you don't have one, you're gonna screw yourself.
what I think is also important too is that managers or anybody teaching or building training is, I think there's actually a book people need to read if you're in management. It's called The Atomic Habits. Here's why. It's about building the proper habits for people, not exact, minute steps and processes. If it's necessary in regards to like engineering or whatever the case may be, sure. But in regards to how people do things, it's important to help them build the right habits, because then you're going to keep telling them things like, oh, you should have done this. Oh, you should have done that. And I'm thinking to myself, God damn it, man. Like, I didn't know that. You know what I'm saying? And it's then they turn around, they blame you because they're like, oh, I told you that last week on Wednesday at 4:20 p.m. Why didn't you remember? And I'm like,
Yeah,
bro, like I had like 8 million things happen since then. I didn't I didn't mean to forget that, but like, damn, I'm human. Like, my bad.
yeah,
So then it becomes like now it's your fault as an employee. But that kind of brings me to why I think being an entrepreneur is so important. Like, people need to continue to do that because the pandemic has really taught people that you can't rely on companies because of it. You think you're secure. And my buddy Mitch earlier today in the other podcast, he said the same thing. He was like, he thinks it's more risky to not build a business because you're depending on a company for your well-being, for
hmm
your house, for your food, for your car. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
because we've been so used to having and not having problems, even through these recessions, I mean, even through the 2008 recession or depression or whatever it's called, recession, I guess, there still was people that were working and everything was fine in their world.
yeah,
But for a big part of the country, it was not for good. Just like right now, which is why I think what the politicians are doing and how there's no real better word for it. They're pussyfooting around, man. They're not
yeah,
doing what they need to do to get these stimulus bills out for people that need it. I agree with Mark Cuban and everybody else. Even Andrew Yang has said this. There needs to be and should have been monthly income, like monthly checks.
yeah,
People are like, well, where's that going to come from? A lot of social media companies making billions of dollars right now. And think about it. Like, because everybody's like, the ad revenue has gone up. I mean, what Apple decided to do in their new operating system update in iOS, of course, is going to fuck them because it basically allows people to choose whether they want to be targeted or not. But the
hmm
reality is still that people spending money online, like Amazon, Walmart.com, all these places, they're making tons of money. So I do believe that having taxation, appropriate taxation that's necessary, because it's like once the internet happened and once companies started making billions of dollars on this internet thing,
hmm
legislation or regulation, I'm not saying we need regulation or legislation for everything. Okay, I'm not saying that. But when these companies are able to make billions of dollars and become trillion-dollar companies, and there's tons of taxes that they're able to legally not pay, then there needs to be other regulations that say, listen, like, you got to pay your fair share, man. We got a lot of shit going on. We need some help,
Exactly. Government. That's when government needs to step in. And I had this conversation last night where it's like, there is that feeling that this is the land of the free, and we should be able to be free to do
right,
as much as we are legally able to.
right,
like with the whole mask thing, it's like people feel like they shouldn't have to wear a mask and all that kind of stuff. But it comes to a point where when it becomes a hazard to humanity, that's when government should step in and mandate something like that, because
right,
you're free to do whatever you want to in your household or whatever.
right.
You're free to do whatever you want to, as long as it's not impeding on other people's
Exactly.
freedoms.
Exactly.
That's it. So when you start going against the grain and science and all this kind of, everything that's pointing towards this is something that needs to be curbed, now government should step in and say, look, we're going to have to mandate something. And that's just in any case. Everybody keeps bringing up, seatbelts. It's like, we didn't, back in the 60s and 70s or whatever, they didn't have seatbelts, but then they had to mandate them because there were so many deaths. It's like, okay, we're trying to.
Well, that makes sense. Seatbelts make a lot of sense, man.
Yeah, it's like, okay, what the best way to curb traffic accidents from seatbelt deaths? Just make seatbelts mandatory, and you have to regulate that these vehicle companies had to make those standard in all cars. And I was like, you see a car with no seatbelts? No. And what else did they have to do later on in modern life or modern day society? Now you're getting ticketed for it. If I catch you without a seatbelt, $75.
Yeah.
Put your seatbelt on. It's
I've never
not
got
a hard habit.
That, but yeah.
I don't think I have. I might have, but
whatever. It's like, maybe.
I might have, being reckless as a young one. That's just what has to happen. People want to argue all day about, their own personal beliefs of what they feel like the government's going to do or whatnot. But it's like, stop and think about it. Is this going to change humanity, or is it harming humanity? If not, then government shouldn't be talking about it at all.
No, or
we really should stop and think, yeah, it's needed.
Yeah. I mean, with the seatbelt thing, that makes sense. With like people's lives, that's kind of where I kind of get to, is like people's lives. Like it's in December. I have to start paying my student loans again, which thank God I have a job, so I'm able to do that. Otherwise, we would have been screwed. I can't even imagine what it's like for people that are coming up on, I don't understand why the government decided to say that you don't have to pay rent for a certain amount of time, right? But then when it came due at that end of that period, number one, they didn't have any stimuluses in place that allowed people to have the income to be able to pay their rent. Number two, they had no system in place, no plan, no nothing for when that happened. It's just going to be now there's going to be a mass amount of evictions, when the reality is they fucked the pooch, man. They should have never done that, knowing that when this came to be, people would still be in a shit place, no job, if any job, barely any job, or barely any cash coming in to the household. It's just it's mind-boggling. It doesn't make any sense. And they go, "Oh, well, we're going to go on break. Sorry, we weren't able to approve a package." Basically, what they're doing is they're wanting to bitch at the president because he made a choice for Supreme Court, saying that he should do that in election year, where there's nothing actually legally speaking in his power that says he cannot do that. They just say you shouldn't. right?
Yeah.
But I'm not, this isn't like the statement I'm expressing is not for or against Trump. It's just stating the fact that he has the legal obligation or he has the legal power to do so. But back, moving back, when it came to, the stimulus packages and getting money in people's hands, like nobody's going to bitch about that. Nobody's going to like complain that like, hey,
No, I think
despite of
you're talking about one
the
side
politician.
of
The
Congress.
politicians
Yes.
are trying to complain about him doing this or making this decision in an election year. And I'm over here thinking like, y'all are having a break. You went on a break for a month and you think that's okay. This is a pandemic. And this means that there needs to be like legitimate like emergency meetings and whatever they need to have
Now
to like
stop
figure this shit
and
out.
really now stop and really think about that statement right there about you have to break it down because uh yeah, they needed to be focusing more on coming up with a stimulus. And then at a point they went on break. Who went on break?
The politicians.
But there's two separate houses, I guess you could say, two separate parts, branches of Congress, and they're governed differently.
What do
And
you mean?
so,
This is something I don't
you,
fully understand. I'm just complaining
exactly.
because I
So,
see us in a very shitty spot, and then they're about to go fucking vacation while
yeah,
they're supposed to figure out whether or not we and that arguing amongst each other like it like because
the
they got nothing to fucking lose, and people
the
are chilling with
evolution
no
of,
fucking money coming through. You know what I mean? In a fucking pandemic,
but it's all party lines. It's all party lines. That's where the
bipartisan
arguments are
shit needs to
now.
go.
Yeah, it's. But how are you going to get rid of it? This is the whole thing where I said in the last one,
Right,
it's either you change it from within or you
right,
revolt.
right. Well,
And,
that's I mean
and
that's what I keep thinking. I'm like I'm not. First off, let me say this before I continue because I don't want anybody thinking anything. But you have to understand from a psychological perspective, you can understand a point of view but not believe it and think or condone it. So I want to be clear about that. But I was telling my best friend Cody, I was like, listen, when people get so broken down because they don't feel like they have any power. I mean, think about it. We're going to be talking about racial issues, inequality issues, and things like that. But that kind of goes into like, I'm surprised there wasn't more shootings. Like, I'm not. I don't want any harm to be done to anybody. I don't want anybody shooting anyone. I want to be clear about that. But when somebody gets to the point where they feel no control,
mhm,
zero, everything gets taken away from them, right? You have nothing left. You're broken. Okay. Uh, you can imagine any scenario that fits into that. Doesn't matter what the details are. Any scenario that fits in that, and all they know is drinking and drugs or whatever because they're trying to dull the pain away. And they get to this point where, psychologically speaking, they're mentally gone, and their ability to understand right and wrong is done. And so they, start to believe this scenario where, you know, helping other people out of their pain because they see it as a mask. And so they're going to turn around and think they're doing them a service when in reality they're doing harm. And, you can understand that and understand like, wow, that's what's happening, but that's not what they need. They need help, but there's not a system in place to help. What's cool though, a little bit of a, you know, not a side note, it's actually on point, is T-Mobile just this is something that's going to be legal in a couple of years that they have to do this, but there is now a mental health line. Instead of 911, it's 988. So if you have T-Mobile, you
okay.
can use that. Other carriers are going to have to support it in the next couple of years, but I think that's amazing, and that's pretty much on point with what we're talking about. Like people, we need to prioritize mental stability because we've allowed an environment where people could technically live with mental disabilities or mental illnesses due to this, right?
Yes,
Like
yes,
this I suffer from having to check this thing like a, smoking a damn cigarette.
yeah.
and I'm not gonna lie, it affects me. And when you try to step away, it's not easy to, because now this is integral to our whole lives. We can't live without this. I need to know what's going on. Like my sister's dad got tested positive for COVID. If I didn't have this, I wouldn't have known. Now I want updates. My mom's in Illinois as well, in a different part of Illinois. She's not near my sister, thank God. I don't know why the hell she's traveling right now. A dumb decision. Love you, Mom, but that was stupid. She's she's got a lot of issues health wise. She shouldn't be traveling. I was surprised when I heard that.
Pause. Can we pause for a second?
Yeah, hold on. Go ahead.
All right, I need to check on something because my wife was saying that there was a disturbance down the way with some neighbors about some stuff. Yeah, hold on. Can you give me like a minute? I need to go outside.
Yeah, go ahead, buddy. Take care of your business. All right, we're back. We had to pause for a moment. Curtis almost had to go tear somebody a new asshole. Somebody almost ran over your kid, man?
Yep. Crazy neighbor. So.
Jeez, man. Well, I'm glad your kid's good. But so entrepreneurship, man, we talked a little bit about it, but with the pandemic, with the bullshit that the politicians are going through, I mean, really what's happening is because of what they're doing, people don't know any better. People don't know whether they should rely on their government or not, but people think they should, right? But they're not able to, because we should have had checks all this year, in my opinion. Now, granted, my wife and I aren't the ones that need it, but it would have helped out. We are in a situation where we need to pay off debt, so that would have been nice. But there's a lot of people out there that actually need it. My situation's my own dumbass doing. And if you're interested in that kind of stuff, go to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Wesley Franks. And I'm doing a debt journey. There's a playlist in there. Check it out. I basically the latest episode I did, I basically talked about how I fucked up and then was afraid to do an episode for months. And I made all these promises and blah, blah, blah. I'm just really terrible at YouTube content. That's one thing I want to do better in 2021. I want to make incremental 1% changes, because the Atomic Habits book that I was telling you about, it's really actually started to work at a lot of things that I've been trying to do better. But the problem is, and this is everybody's problem, not just mine, is we take this big ass thing we're trying to do, we make it too big, and we don't break it down into smaller pieces. And they have this concept in there that's about, doing something 1% every day. So if I'm trying to work out, the reality is people, they think it's, there's a lot to it, but they think that, oh no, I got to work out every single day. I got to do this for like 8 hours or like 2 hours or 1 hour or whatever. But the reality is, like, you just got to start by tying your shoe, man, and going for a walk, or tying your shoe and that's it. And just walk outside. Just make a habit of tying your shoes.
Stretch first.
Right. But, the idea is you have to break down what you're trying to do. If you're trying to walk more, tie your shoes and step outside. You're already outside, so you're most likely going to go for a walk. For me, my goal is there's a 2-minute rule in there too. And for me, every morning, my goal is to at least walk for 2 minutes, and I'm already there. So I end up walking for 5 or 10 minutes. But I also like to watch YouTube videos in the morning. That's a bad habit that I have. But I decided to do habit stacking and decided to watch YouTube videos while I'm walking on the treadmill. So now I'm able to do something I kind of enjoy that is a time sucker in the morning. But if I focus on putting that in addition to something that's going to help me, which is walking in the morning, then, compound that with healthier choices throughout the day. Maybe I have a light breakfast, but, just, and then instead of on lunch, I buy something or get something that has bread, but I take the bread out, or I make a decision on a meal that doesn't have bread, those kind of things. Those are 1% incremental changes. And so when it comes to entrepreneurship, people look at that the same way. They think, oh no, it's too much. I can't devote this much time. But the reality is, if you have an hour to fuck off when you get off from work, you have an hour to spend on trying to look in research and blah, 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 and looking into things that can, better your lives.
Yeah, that's definitely my problem too. I just,
But I mean, I say that knowing that that's my problem too, because I get home and I'm like, oh, but the wife and I finally spent 30 to 40 minutes the other night looking at these videos for this membership website that we subscribe to learn how to build membership sites.
mm,
And we watched some videos. We're getting some good ideas. We're getting some traction. We're going to be sitting down more and more as much as we can, or more often, I should say, and just trying to focus on, one video at a time. If video's like 30 minutes, cool. Today we're going to accomplish one video. That's the best we can do because she has piano lessons. I'm doing podcasting. I'm also trying to do YouTube stuff. I'm also trying to focus on learning more Android programming. You know what I mean?
mm,
And working on the nonprofit that I'm working on building for voting, providing better information so that people can vote. And what I mean by that is you don't know shit about politicians. You don't know where to find that information. And if there was an application that you could use that would tell you more about politicians, if they're running for office, what are the issues they have? What's the campaign they're running on? You
their
know,
platforms, yeah.
Exactly. Long term, we want to archive the content because a lot of times politicians will update their website and change shit.
Hmm.
When in reality, like, that's fine. Typos, sure. But if it's like you're changing entirely what you said, like, for example,
You were
Biden
for
was saying,
this.
yeah, Biden was like,
You
I'm for not, fracking, or I'm for fracking. Like, dude's changing his tune everywhere he goes. And so that's
come
stuff
on,
that we
man.
want to.
I never said that. Come on, man.
Right. But yeah, man, I mean, you know, and that's kind of where that is. But I want to move into some other important things. We can skip consumer goods pricing. I can't remember what we were talking about last time, but political discussion, we kind of been already talking about that. Equality and racism and systemic racism, we can kind of jumble that together. We were
Mm,
basically talking about and police reform, so we can kind of just dive into that. And I want to understand, like, so from your perspective, because I recently, when I was looking into the whole issue of systemic racism, I I didn't understand it. Let me put it that way. I didn't understand it.
mm,
I didn't know enough to speak on it. And then I learned and read and even read some perspectives from cops that were ballsy enough to write about their experience as a white cop in a racist, sexist, sexually harassing environment and a culture that was accepted. And regardless of whatever policies or bullshit they tell the press or that they have on their websites or whatever their handbooks are, they're still going to do whatever the fuck they want to do. And if you don't do it
mhm.
their way, you can get the fuck out, pretty much. And he wrote
And be blackballed.
what's that?
And be blackballed, pretty much.
Oh, blackballed. Yeah, like if you don't do, like, because it could be somebody who has a wholesome view on life and treating people and loving on, being a part of a community, and then you get into this police academy and they do things a certain way because they're old veteran police officers from the times that a lot of people wish didn't happen. And so they're the ones training the police officers, and then you get into the actual precinct and those are the fucking people in leadership.
Yep.
So
Yep. It's a
what
generational thing.
yeah, so that's how I understand it to be a systemic racist issue, is because of that. And there's evidence to that. People have spoke to that. You can talk to any police officers that are speaking out about that. So from your
Mhm.
perspective, what is systemic racism? What has been your experience with that? Have you had issues with it? Um, let's talk, man.
So, first off, I want to say that people need to understand that politics is a part of pretty much every facet of your life. That's just the way it is. It's gonna be there until we actually make a change. So the thing with systemic racism that I understand is that you have shit that went on, slavery, and then you had the Jim Crow laws and new caste system that's pretty much now. Um, the system that we have nowadays, which has pretty much adapted, kind of went underground, but still exists, was built generationally. So what all everything that happened back in the Jim Crow days, that's what has created this system that we have now that is systemically racist. So it's not just like, that anybody's making it up, or that that because of all the strides that we've had as a society to be accepting of people of color, that it just went away. No, it's still there. It's a generational thing. It's just like um,
Well, it's like
anybody.
it's isn't it like where there's people that grew up without that? Like for me, for example, my mom grew up where I grew up around my mom saying her friend Rachel, not her black friend Rachel. So I never actually had any inclination of other skin colors. I just knew people looked different. And
Mhm.
then when it came to me hearing my dad, say the N word and like, speak in ways that are vulgar, the problem is like he loves people. Like he's not that kind of person. But when he gets mad, when he used to do drugs and struggle with alcoholism, like he would turn into a very nasty person. He didn't care who you were.
Mhm.
Like he would dive into saying some nasty shit. He didn't care what your color was. He
And
if
he
you
might have just
happen
been saying it
well, I mean, if you
just to
happen
be
to be
harmful.
black, he just kind of knows that certain things will piss people off, and he wants to get into a fight because he's an
Exactly.
aggressive person when he gets, into drinking alcohol and doing drugs and shit. But
Yeah.
people that I've experienced otherwise, outside of that, it's just what you hear, it's what you see,
Yeah.
and so, but
Like
the
I
people,
said, that I believe that we do need to be more integrated,
yeah,
because that's what will pretty much kill racism. Just like
right.
COVID.
What do you
If
mean integrated?
integrated, like, okay, so like I said before, I think we agreed to disagree on it, maybe. I feel like you you have a higher potential of finding racist people in a more rural area than you do in a highly populated area, because if they've never actually uh, uh, interacted with people of color, they have no clue. They don't understand how it is their culture is, or how their habitats are. How they were raised. So all they know is what they see on TV or
Right.
entertainment or whatever. And that's why we there's the push for representation in movies nowadays for black people, not just the drug dealer or the gang member, or the ultimate bad guy. We want the protagonist characters too. That's why we got
Can
Black
we talk
Panther, and it
about
was just
22
a
Bridges?
huge movie. No, and I never watched it with Bozeman.
Rest in peace, man. It was a beautiful movie. That dude
Yeah.
was a damn hero. Aside from him, being a Black Panther, which was a beautiful movie as well. I
Mm.
mean, 22 Bridges, man. You got to watch that movie,
Okay.
bro.
Yeah,
He
I
fights
gotta put that on the list.
hard. He fights hard against the
Nice.
whole city of
Yeah.
cops, because they're all fucking dirty. It's a damn good movie. I can't tell
Yeah.
you. I can't tell you what it's
It
about.
was based in New York, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
22
in
Bridges.
New York. Yeah. So I gotta watch that. It's
I want to watch it again
from
tonight. Jesus.
for me too. It's like that's not based off of it, but for me, I don't like watching old movies that have to do with slavery.
Okay.
I just can't. I've never watched 12 Years a Slave.
Mm.
I didn't watch Django until maybe, I don't know, when did that come out? You know,
I don't know, but that shit was
20.
bloody as hell. I don't know how the hell they did all that
It's,
syrup, but
it's Quentin Tarantino. What did you expect?
I know, but it's just like, dude, like, where do you
But
get all that? Like
I just
somebody would like you get shot in the arm and all of a sudden you got 8 gallons
you
of
lost the
fucking
yeah.
goo.
No,
Like, bro, how much blood you got in just an arm?
it's freaking crazy. Yeah, but
Yeah.
I can't watch Birth of a Nation. I haven't seen that. I think I watched Amistad in like high school or something.
Yeah.
I can't watch those. It's just,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't like seeing, I don't like seeing that.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's bringing up the past, but it's a really hard past to
I think one of
endure.
the problems with that too is the fact that the people making movies could also be potentially that generational racist. Maybe they're not outwardly racist, but they're inwardly racist. Maybe they have some
Yeah,
racist like tendencies or like
and they
habits.
can, yeah, and they'll be like, "Oh, I'm not racist. I'm not
They're not
racist." Yeah,
racist,
but
but
you,
the way they write, the way they direct, the way they produce could be portrayed in that way. But the thing that well, first, let me say this. Like, I hope everybody understands this. I'm not trying to cut this guy off. Like, I don't want to hear him. I have a bad habit of things popping in my head, and I want to like pew. But I'm also trying to like make sure I'm saying listen, 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 because your perspective is important. So I just wanted to make sure that I mention that. So be you're obviously welcome to uh, chime in and interrupt me if you need to, but I just want to make sure that that's clear. I'm not doing it because I have a want to say something like to shut him up or anything. But for me, it's a difficult. Like I have something in my head, I got to say it. So
yeah, no, you're good. No, and yeah, so that was the other thing that I was gonna say.
yeah,
What happened here? Why do I have
you're still good, by the way. I still see you.
for some reason like another thing is popping? There it goes. There it goes. Am I there?
Uh, he's gone. Let me try to get him back. He must have pressed the wrong button. That's okay, everybody. We'll get him back. Just bear with me just a moment here. He was there for just a second and then he all right, just a moment. Oh, he's back. Hey,
I
there we
don't
go.
know what that did, but okay.
You're back.
Yeah.
You're back. No problem. No
All
problem.
right.
All right. So you were talking about how you don't like to watch those movies.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, and then I'll try to remember to shut up so I can hear you, is I think it's important for my kids, anyways. Let me just express that. You have kids, I don't, but I want my kids to understand what happened. So I think the problem that people might get into when they don't want to watch things is they don't understand what happened. They don't understand visually what the pain that people went through, right? The struggle,
Yeah.
the sexual harassment, the amount of like degrading that happened to people that were human beings.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for my kids, regardless of how gruesome. I think it's important for them to understand. Look, this is what happened. This is what's not supposed to happen now. This is the this is the bad choices and bad culture and bad just anything and everything. Like just bad behavior. Like this is just like I don't know the way to sum it all up, except it's just terrible. It's treating human beings like garbage is just not how it should have ever happened. I don't.
Yeah.
I just there's a lot of history that people can get into, but the reality is I want my kids to understand what happened, the truth, and
Hmm.
understand it so that when they go out in the world by
Hmm.
themselves, not just with around us, but when they go out in the world, they know how to just treat people with respect, not because of skin color, but treat people with respect.
Yeah.
It's important because when I see anybody at a gas station, I open the door. I don't care who you are. It's just built in me. I just open the door for you. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother
Exactly. Yeah.
me. If somebody needs help, I help. If it's a situation where I can, where I'm like, I'm not in a rush or I'm not in a hurry, and even then, you should try to do your best to help people if they really need help. But you
Yeah.
know, the reality is like just be respectful to other human beings until they give you a reason not to.
And so it's easy to say it, this is what happened. The problem is that a lot of it is whitewashed. A lot of the history
Mm,
is whitewashed. So, when you get um, representation in Hollywood to show how things really were, it's things get whitewashed. That whole movement that they had or still having when they do movies. The Harriet Tubman
Mm,
Tubman movie. I didn't watch that either.
I haven't seen
But
it.
there was a whole movement about that because you're telling the story of this woman who was a free slave that started to smuggle slaves to Mexico, and they the way that it was written was there was a white savior, and that's this whole thing that people clinged on to about, oh, you guys, somehow it's a movie for black people and somehow you still wrote the white guy in to be the savior and the one that did all the work or whatever. We got to thank white people
Yeah.
for helping us once again. It's like I couldn't grasp onto that, but I kind of can understand where you're coming from. It's like it's just like any movie. I don't think they do it anymore nowadays, but it's like any movie. There's got to be romance in it. It's like Pearl Harbor. There's like they just had to throw a romance in there. It was
Yeah, I
a
mean,
really
when movies, that's one thing I don't like about movies is sometimes, like for example, with Harry Potter is a great example. Man, ain't no love shit happen until like the eighth movie. You know,
yeah.
they've had like seven movies,
Well, they were
and
freaking teenagers, so it probably
well, you know what I
shouldn't
mean.
be.
I get that point, but what my point is like hold hands or like I like you or those kind of things. Because I mean, shit, nowadays they dive deep into that, like because of how the teenage aspect is about like dating and shit like that. I get you make a good point, but I was making a point to say movies as a whole they do that.
Yeah. So
Or I'm sorry, movies as a whole do what you're talking about, and
yeah, they
I
did
appreciate
because
movies that let things breathe and not
exactly like
force that
doesn't
kind of
it
stuff. Yeah,
doesn't it doesn't always have to have love interest in there. It
yeah,
just tell the story, you
right.
know. But
But
so
back to what you were saying about you don't like to watch those movies. Um, I guess if I can, this might be a difficult question, but if you don't have, if you don't want to answer it, you don't have to. But do you think it's important for your kids to know what happens so they understand, coming from the perspective of, they know what their skin color is and they know that stuff has happened in the past to people who have the same skin color, and that it doesn't mean that everybody now is that same type of because there's generations
of
of people, it doesn't matter their color, that grew up in great environments that just taught them that you love people or show people respect because they're people, and
mm,
that's pretty much it. And I know that's true, but there's also, like you mentioned, people in rural areas. Now there's still some people in cities, but like you make a good point to say, like generationally, there are people in rural areas that still have those racist tendencies.
mm. Yeah. So like I said, it's all generational. And so when it is it's kind of a rite of passage for Black people to have that conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, you have to have that conversation with your kids because we tell our kids all the time, you gotta understand, you can't be going out there doing everything that your little friends do because you are of a different skin color. You are going to be looked at as somewhat of a scapegoat. You're going to be looked at different by authority as if you are already guilty. You can't just you have to walk a thin line. That's pretty much what we are told. That's what we tell our kids. But you have to because if you look at everything that goes on, it's like Tamir Rice just playing with a play gun. They run up and shoot him automatically. Don't even do question anything. Just shoot because it was a Black kid. He looks like he's older than he is. He could be grown, and he's holding a gun. So we have to be precautious of how we move. It's I every time I get in my car and I am driving, I am constantly thinking of scenarios, constantly thinking well, if a cop pulls out of here right now and comes up behind me and pulls me over, I got to do this and this and this in order to show him that yes, I do have a legal license to carry. I have a firearm in the car. You know, what do you want me to do? I'm not going to go reach for anything. You can pull me out of the car, whatever. I'm thinking of these things constantly, all the time. I've never had a bad encounter, a racist encounter with authority. I've never really had a racist encounter with people, period. But I'm a people watcher, and I read
Yeah.
body language. I read
Well,
people's
I'm really
tendencies.
glad you haven't though. That's good.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad too, but that doesn't make me put my wall down.
No, understood.
Um,
Yeah, that's not what I was
yeah,
getting at. I was just saying I'm glad you haven't had to experience that. But one thing that I think I want to also make a point to say is how you carry yourself is important too.
oh
Because
yeah,
there's because
definitely,
I'm like I know this is going to be difficult and people are going to be mad at me, but look, it doesn't matter who you are. If you are an asshole, it doesn't matter who you're dealing with. Like if it happens to be authority, like how like that's I guess that's my only perspective on that. And people may have a disagreement, but like I've seen plenty of videos where
yeah,
cops literally would go up, just they're not being threatening, they're not being assholes, they're just doing their job.
exactly.
And you'll have people where of course you want to express your rights, you want to obviously enact your rights, um, and protect them, but at the same time, like there is something to be said that if you are cussing and screaming and yelling and fucking being an asshole,
Yeah.
how can you expect the other person to respond? Now let's take race, let's take everything out of the conversation and talk about energy. Talk about
Hmm.
uh volume, talk about um defense, right? Like people
Hmm.
there is a biological defense system that we have to protect ourselves. Doesn't matter who
Hmm.
you are. And if you're coming into a situation with somebody who's yelling and screaming at you, automatically you're thinking suspect, right?
Yeah.
Like it doesn't matter who it is. And so,
I think it's
go
better
ahead.
to just say you're gonna go on a defense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so if an individual is acting in that way, then yeah, you're not going to get a good response from a cop ever. However, there are cops that doesn't matter what you do are going to be racist.
Hmm.
There's that. I,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm naive. I understand that's a thing, but I do want to express that, uh, the saying, if you didn't do something wrong, then you shouldn't have to worry. That pisses me off because of the cops that do shit out of their fucking like power or they're just
Hmm.
assholes. Because I mean, they can decide to give somebody a ticket or not, right?
Hmm.
So they do have power to decide not to do something or to handle a situation well.
Yeah.
And there's also an opportunity to teach somebody a lesson in a
Yeah.
way that's like, hey, I'm gonna be extra careful in this situation, not because of my job, but because of like how this can be perceived.
Yeah.
And then they also have to start thinking about their families because now cops have a whole nother conversation to be had, from that perspective of because of the idiot that made the choice that he did, um, to take that
Yeah.
man's life. You know what I mean? And yes, I'm having a brain fart, but
No. Yeah. And it
George
does. It
Floyd.
does.
George Floyd was his name. Like,
Yes.
but that guy, because of what that cop did, now other cops that don't have like they're decent human beings or decent cops, they have to like now think about that. Like now how I
Yeah.
handle a situation could come back to my family because people are getting a contextual perspective of the situation, which is also true. When
Yeah.
you hear stuff online, there are situations where we're judging by what we see. We don't know the whole story, but one part of it is how you handle yourself. The other part is how the officer handles themselves as well. And
Exactly.
so, but
I
I'm not
can. I
taking.
can't.
Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
can't speak. I can't speak to that. I did have a encounter when I was younger. In a sense of that. I had a little beat up car that I got from my mom. It was her old car, but I was souping it up and all kinds of stuff, you know. Um,
Yeah.
and so it was in my neighborhood in Hanover Park, and uh, in our neighborhood is pretty much it's one way in, one way out. There's it's just a street that goes straight through. There's alleys that branch off of it, some cul-de-sacs, but it's one way in, one way out. So cops, it's easy to patrol through there. Um, Came up to a three-way stop, and I stopped to let the person to the left of me go. They had already stopped, so I had to stop. They went. I turned left. There was a cop that was right behind them, I guess, and he busted a bitch. He did a U-turn, pulled me over in my own parking lot of my job, McDonald's, right there on the corner. And so he pulls me over. He said, "License registration." I gave him a license registration. Uh, do you know why I pulled you over? No, why did you pull me over? Oh, because what was he said, oh, your tail lights out. And my car had like recently been hit when it was parked in the parking lot, in the same parking lot that we're in. Like this car, it was icy. It was an icy hill. They came sliding down, hit my car. My lamp was out, but the light bulb still worked. So he said, "Your light's out." And I was like, "No, sir, the light's not out. The lamp is broken, but the light works." He's like, "Oh, well, your exhaust is loud." I'm like, "I've been pulled over many a times, and I've never been told my exhaust was." Oh no, you know how it went. Okay, first he said, "Oh, you blew that stop sign back there," and I was like, "No, officer, I didn't because I let that person in front of you go." And he's like, "Oh, well, your tail light's out." No, the light works. The lamp is broken. Oh, well, your exhaust is loud. I mean, I've been pulled over plenty of times, and they never said anything about my exhaust. So I don't know why it's you're telling me it's loud. And he's like, "Oh, well, let me just run your plates and stuff." Now, granted, this was a black officer, so there was no race in this. But he came back and he said, "You're clean. You're free to go." I'm like, "Okay, well, thanks for wasting my time." It's like I didn't tell him that, but that's just how I felt. Right. It was like, what was all this for? Like, you really just
right. Well, and I think that's another problem too. So there is a larger issue in that cities have demands for a certain amount of tickets. Like that's like apparently a revenue stream, which is garbage.
It's an unwritten rule.
They'll find shit for no reason. And like you mentioned, like your officer encounter was, a black guy, but I mean, I think that's a problem. The cash bond system, like oh, you're on a $10,000 bond. The bailsman, like the bail bond, yeah. So that whole system is garbage because it targets the poor and unable people are unable to pay. Because what happens is somebody, and even me, I mean, hell, if I had something happen to me and they're like, "Yeah, your bond is $10,000," I'm like, I'm fucked. I can't pay that. Exactly. I get out of jail and or I try to, I'm stuck with that. So I'm stuck in jail, but then because I'm in jail, I'm going to lose my job. So I'm speaking to like just how that happens. I'm not trying to necessarily use me an example, but it's just like if that were to happen to me, like I wouldn't be able to pay. I'd be stuck in jail. I'd lose my job, come out. If whatever I did to go to jail was a felony, well, I'll use my anger, for example. Well, I'll admit something. I actually haven't admitted this yet, but here we go. Truth time, story time, whatever. I've been working on my anger for a long time. I've had issues with anger but I grew up around, my father who would yell and scream and hit and all that kind of stuff. He didn't never directly just try to beat me. It was more like he would, because he had his own anger issues and I was a dumb 8-year-old kid, I would be angry and mad and yell and scream because I was 8 and stupid. And then I would go to punch him, but I'm 8 and stupid and weak as fuck. So why would you try to take on an 8-year-old kid thinking like he's trying to deck you like a full grown man, right? But no, my dad would push me to the ground and he would pummel me. You know what I'm saying? And because he thought that, he had it in his head that he had to do something back to me. And that's kind of where I got that from. But then, I've had stepdads that were abusive too. So I've, growing up with that, with anger and all this other stuff that was, unresolved bullshit, I've had to learn how to keep that in check, because if I go off and do something stupid, like punch somebody or whatever, you know, I could land myself in jail, and
Yep.
I could have had like a felony assault or whatever. But if that were to happen, and if I hadn't gotten that stuff in check, I'm pretty sure I'd be in jail. If I didn't have stable jobs and things that kept money going through, and I wasn't able to pay my speeding tickets, I'd have a warrant for my arrest, and I'd probably be in jail. There's a
Exactly.
lot of things that uh, choices that people can make. So I want to be clear here. I've made choices to get better as a person, but if I didn't keep myself in check, I could probably be a person that's in and out of jail. But I've made choices because I want a stable life. Like I'm not
Yep.
rich, but I'm okay. I got debt, but trying to get that shit squared away. But for people that can't take care of that, people that are like stuck with, they've made a few bad choices, but they're not a bad person, and so they've had to deal with this environment that they're in. If it's a bad neighborhood,
Yeah.
and if it's a bad neighborhood, sometimes they're stuck in this social dilemma where they feel like if they leave, they're not, their manhood might be in question, or maybe they were a part of a group of people who they grew up with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, oh, we're getting close to 7:30. Let me wrap up. But and it doesn't matter. Like my brother was caught in some of that too, and he
Yeah.
he he made poor choices. He could have chosen not to, but that sucks because it depends on where you live. You're stuck. You can't control that all the time. Especially if you're not 18 or over, you can't always control that. You know what I mean? But then
Exactly.
again,
Yeah.
those people that can control that, they don't know where to go. They don't know how to get a better life somewhere else. They don't know what direction to take. So I do feel like that bail bondsman stuff and that cash stuff and for profit prisons, all that stuff that needs to go.
Exactly. Yeah. And so we just got to work on it. We just got to work on pushing the politicians to actually do something about it. So
For
good
sure.
luck with that.
I know you got to wrap up, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on what you think needs to be done for police reform.
Uh, it's gonna have to be on a national level, and that's gonna be hard, but that's the only way that there's gonna be some significant change is nationally.
So when you say nationally, like with police reform, what do you think from a systemic point? What do you think can be done better? Like, do you think people need to be removed? Do you think people need to be retrained? Because the person that you talked about, Jocko Willink, he also talked about how there needs to be more training, not defunding. So, do you think people can be trained to be better officers, or do you think because of the culture,
There
like
there
they can't?
there needs to be actual accountability. There needs to be that right people in place to hold people accountable um, for doing uh, uh, for not doing their job. And so that's just pretty much it. It's there needs to be actual accountability. There can be more training, but the thing is that the whole defunding means that you're taking this excessive amount of money that these departments get, which they buy, military grade freaking tanks and all kinds of stuff, or gifted or anything. Stop all that too. You don't need
Oh, I
these
mean, I agree.
these
They don't like police officers don't need all that shit.
you don't need all and but there's then you get problems like in Philly where there was a shooting like a month ago or whatever, and the thing or it was in Chicago, I forgot which one it was, but the thing was is that none of the police officers had a taser. They didn't even have tasers.
Yeah, they
So
need
what else
tasers.
are they gonna
They
use?
need they need less lethal options. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean there needs to be something done that's and everybody's gonna say, well
Yeah.
that's socialism, but I mean
No,
what's
no,
the
no.
fire
Socialism. No,
department?
there's a difference. There's a difference. I'm a programmer. I understand from a sense of scalability. You have to create policies and procedures that scale. And
Hmm.
I know that's a difficult problem to solve, but that's what needs to happen. Like, there's no reason why, for example, with Second Amendment rights, we don't need to get into that, but I'm just going to specify that having that same right across the country, there's no reason why it
Hmm.
should be different state to state. Why should my constitutional right be different in every state I go into? You know what I mean? I should just be able to carry a firearm. If I do agree that these things need to be registered, I'm okay with that. Maybe some people might disagree, but I think it's important for them to at least know and have knowledge of. And there can be an argument for that
A
against
national database, yeah.
Yeah, there can be an argument against that, sure, but I think it's important that, regardless if there is registration or not, I think it's important that people be able to, enact their rights. But, back to the whole like national police reform, I personally think there's no reason why there should be different laws or different regulations or whatever, just because city council or the mayor or the governor wants to pick and choose what kind of shit they want to bitch about, like tint or, volume level or whatever bullshit they want to make laws about, and I think that's kind of where the problem lies is when you move, we're in a world or a country that there's laws that exist for when the internet didn't exist. Now, because the internet does exist, you literally can work from anywhere. So because of that, now you're having to choose whether or not you want to live somewhere specifically for it goes into being able to build your own house on your own land. Like if you buy land, it's different in every state, whether you can buy what you or build what you want or not. You know what I mean? Like, I think that it's important to have safety guidelines and put policies in place or procedures rather for like electrical and shit. But,
Yeah, it's difficult when you talk about federal and state. So yeah,
yeah, I know is your wife or somebody's nudging you to go?
yeah, yeah.
All right, man. My bad. I'm not trying to keep you. It's just we have some good conversations sometimes.
Exactly. They don't understand that.
My wife bugs me too, man. But we'll wrap up, man. Definitely, because it seems like we didn't have as much time as we had last time. We'll do another episode for sure. Anyways, man, it was great talking to you. You have a great rest of your day, and I'll be excited for the next episode. We'll see you guys later.
All right.